All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Looks like there's a few people watching. If you don't have an account, I don't think it'll let you comment. If that's happening to you, I also have Discord open. You can go over there and put in a message, let me know. And you can chat there if you want to. So I just wanted to give you some basic information here about Discord first. So as you can see, there are a few different separate sections on Discord. On the far right, you can see people's names. I think everybody so far has figured this out, who is in Discord. But in case there are people later who want to watch this, if you click on somebody's name, like let's say I want to send Claudia a direct message, I can click on her name and I can simply type a message in the message box like that. As soon as I hit enter, it's going to open up the chat window. But the other way to do that is if you look in the top left corner, I'm highlighting it here, you can't see the cursor, but if you hover over it, it says home. It's the little Discord person thingy, and if you click on that, this is where you get a set of other options, and you can see people who you have direct messaged previously. If you have never sent someone a direct message, no one will show up in this list. But as soon as you do, it will. So you can see here direct messages with people. And apparently this is different on my screen, but up here in the top, there are buttons for start video call and start voice call. This, of course, is going to look different if you're on a mobile application as opposed to a non-mobile one. And I have not downloaded the desktop version. I assume it looks very similar to this. But in here you can start a video call with somebody or a voice call, which support within this direct message piece of the application up to 9 people. If you go back to our chat area, you can of course join a general voice by clicking here. And once you do that, it will say down here in the bottom, voice connected. And then if you hover over this here, there's an option to disconnect. And you can disconnect that piece of it. But as long as you have that open, you can be in any of the other chat rooms as long as they don't involve voice or video, and continue text type chatting with people. And that's pretty much the basics. If you want to, just kind of like in other social media platforms, if you want to have someone notified that you're talking to them, use the @ symbol and start typing their name. And as soon as you type in the @ symbol, names will show up that you can click on in order to make sure they get notified. So for instance, if you want to make sure that I'm notified about a question you have, you can click on my name and then it will send me a notification about that. And so I'll know to respond to it. There's also GIFs, emoticons, the plus icon on the left of the enter message bar. If you click on that, it allows you to upload a document. And it also has integrated web address support, and it shows you a little preview when you put that in. Like earlier, I put in a link to the Weather Channel, although in this case it didn't show me a preview. This is underneath that is actually a screenshot that I took to put in here. So it's got a lot of nice features that are embedded within it. You can easily share, for instance, documents on Google Drive and that sort of thing. All right, and if you have other questions about this, let me know. I can put those things up later in separate videos, or we can chat about that. All right, now SPSS. Let me pull that up here. So when you first open SPSS, you're looking here at the roller coasters data set. Looks like it's kind of small on the screen. Let's see if I can fix that. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Okay, that looks a little better. So you can see there's 21 variables here. Park ID, theme. These are the column names, drops, highest drop, inversions. In the type column, you have different options and you can change these. And depending on what you want to do in SPSS, these are going to limit you on what you're able to actually do with them. So for instance, a string variable implies that it's a text entry, some type of words that are used. And if you click data view, and I've now cropped the screen so you can't see it, but you'll see it if you have it open, it'll show you what the actual data set looks like. And you'll see in the theme column, for instance, here, it's actual names. Roller coaster type in the next column also has names. These look like the actual name of the roller coaster. So when you go back to variable view, that's why those say string. So if you're going to try to analyze that data using some kind of statistical procedure, it's going to limit your ability to do that when it says string. And if you click on the three little dots next to it, and now I'm noticing that it's not capturing this piece, but you have options for numeric, date, currency, that kind of thing. So basically the two main things that you usually see here are numeric and string. Numeric allows you to do statistical things with the data. So it's just telling you what the data looks like. And then if you go over to the column that says measure, this is the most important thing to check when you're looking at this. So for instance, theme, the type is string and it says nominal. So nominal means that it is related to categories that don't have an inherent order to them. That's what that should be. So those strings, if the themes are recurring, where they are actually designating categories as opposed to unique for each thing, then the theme could be something that is useful in statistical analysis in order to tell differences between groups, for instance, as opposed to something that says scale. Now, scale variable is important for if you're wanting to calculate, for instance, mean and standard deviation on those values. If it is set to nominal, then it's not going to give you that option of running that kind of information with it. The other option when you click on it and it's not showing up there is ordinal, and ordinal data is categories that have an inherent order, but the difference between them is not necessarily the same. So for instance, here you might have intensity is shown as a scale variable. So maybe you're assuming that intensity was measurable, so the difference between a 1 and 2 is the same as between a 2 and a 3. But on the other hand, intensity rating, I would actually change this to ordinal, because the rating is from, I think, 1 to 10, and it doesn't make sense to make that a scale variable necessarily. although with a scale that's that wide, a lot of times you can. But a difference between a 1 and a 2 and a 2 and a 3 may not necessarily be the same, especially if it's something that was handed to a person to evaluate. So for instance, Likert scale is usually considered ordinal rather than this scale type, because at some point, let's say it's on a 5-point scale and you're thinking about agree versus disagree, at some point you're going to have people who are looking at that and thinking, oh, well, I'm moving from agree to disagree. That may be a farther jump than strongly agree to agree, for instance, which is why I have issues with creating means from those values. Sometimes are not the best idea, although most people say that when you, and when I say people, I mean statisticians, when they change that, they are actually considering that on a 5-point scale, it is wide enough scale that probably it doesn't matter that the error involved or the difference between what you would get if you evaluated it from an ordinal perspective versus this scale perspective, or what I refer to as continuous, is not going to be a big enough discrepancy that it matters all that much. So those are important to look at because they are going to limit what you can do with this data. Okay. The other important columns, there are 2 of them. The label column is important. You can type things in there if you don't know what the variable means. In this case, the variable names are pretty descriptive to understand what they're talking about. And then the values column is also really important. So for instance, if you don't know what the intensity ratings mean, you can put in the values with a description of what they are. So for instance, here there has been one put in. If you click on the little dots, for custom design, it says 0 equals video game default. And by the way, I added this, it did not exist originally. Video game default, not custom. 1 equals custom created coaster. And you can't see that there's not capturing this pop-up menu that is there. But when you click on those little dots, it shows it to you. You can see what those numbers mean so that you don't have to wonder later. And anything you put in the label column is going to show up in the output. All right, so let me move the output file where it's visible. Okay, the output file, once you run something, so let me overlay. All right, so when you click on Analyze, so Analyze and Graphs are going to be where you're spending most of your time in this course. And let me just go through a few things here, and I'll move this as a to show you what I'm looking at. So if you go under Descriptive Statistics, you have a few different options here that are going to be useful to you. Frequencies is for categorical data, things that are categorized as nominal or ordinal, and descriptives are going to be for things that are on a continuous scale. And what I find to be the most helpful when you're starting out is this Explore option, which allows for multiple things to be done all at once. Frequencies and descriptives are more limiting. And if you open up that Explore option, for instance, let's say we want to look at excitement ratings and put that in the dependent list. The factor list is when you want to break that out according to specific groups. So if you remember when we looked at the custom design just a moment ago, under custom design, there was a few different options. 1 meant it was custom and 0 meant that it wasn't. So let's say we want to compare excitement ratings for things that were customly built by the guy whose database this comes from versus the things that came kind of stock. So if we put custom design in the factor list, it's going to give us two sets of output, one for things that were in the custom and one that were labeled as stock. If you click on the statistics tab, you get some different options here, and you can click these if you want. It will show you potential outliers and percentiles, although I find the box plot to be most helpful in seeing that rather than seeing it as a list here. But if you want to see that list, it will show it to you. The percentiles are broken up into different groups than it would be done in a box plot. Under plots, I suggest not looking at a stem and leaf plot. It's not all that helpful, and it basically gives you the same information as in a histogram, especially when you're looking at larger data sets, which we will do later in the course. The stem and leaf plot just becomes overwhelming because it doesn't fit on the screen and it kind of spills over and it's kind of awkward. The other thing that you can check here that we will talk about later, I'll do a separate video of this, is the normality plots with tests to look at whether things are normally distributed or not. And you can leave the rest of this the same. And then under options, this has to do with when there are missing values. I think there's only one variable in this data set that has a few missing values, although that variable is not that interesting to look at anyway. I don't remember which one it was, but listwise is the way that you normally want to do this. What pairwise means is that when let's say all of the variables are there or the pieces are there, then it'll do it by a pair if you're comparing variables to one another. So listwise is kind of the default unless we're going to impute missing values with something else. And then here it says display. You want to keep that on both statistics and plots. We just selected some plots and click OK. Once you click OK, just wait for it to populate here. Okay. So you see this first table that shows up tells you how many pieces of information are in each subset. So notice it says excitement, and then the first column says custom design, and the first option, because we labeled them, it says video game default, not custom, and in is 43. So that 43 people in the not custom, and then there are 99 custom created coasters. And then you can see in the second set of columns for N and percent, it says cases missing. It shows you that there's 0 missing cases, and then tells you how many there are at the end, which is the same because there's nothing missing. If you keep scrolling, descriptives shows you the mean, confidence interval for the mean, which we don't need to worry about right now. 5% trimmed mean means they trimmed off the bottom and top 5% so that you could see if there was any difference in those groups there, if they were based on the outliers. Median, variance, standard deviation, min, max, range, interquartile range, skewness, kurtosis, which we can talk about those later. The tests of normality are here, which we can also talk about later. It shows you a histogram for each group. Notice underneath the description, it says for custom design equals video game default, not custom. Shows you the mean and standard deviation and the sample size. And then for the custom created one, you have that. These plots are in order to help you understand normality better, and we can talk about them later. And then there is a side-by-side box plot, which I find really helpful to look at. And so that, I think, is the thing that you're going to be wanting to think about most with the next assignment, is this type of output that has all of this information in one nice stream. And we will talk later about some of these other things. So for now, if you have questions about this, you can do it inside of the general chat, or I set up a second chat channel. And the second chat channel is called Roller Coaster Tycoon. I've already selected it here. So if you have questions, you can post them here. Although the general chat, you could post them there as well. It's just if you have specific questions to this data set about Roller Coaster Tycoon, you can see that here. And go to the assignment details for more information about Roller Coaster Tycoon. All right, and if you have any other questions about this, let me know, and I will help out as much as possible. I know some of you are nervous about using SPSS, and I want you to know that I'm here to support you and help you remember what to do here. And I'm sort of following your lead, so keep me posted about how things are going, what you're struggling with, and we can negotiate pacing ongoing throughout the course. All right, and I'm going to stop streaming now, and then this will be uploaded to YouTube soon.